You know, professional wrestling is one of the most interesting forms of entertainment that you can run across. It is sport and ballet all wrapped in one. And I know the whole it's not ballet, but the athleticism, the drama, uh, it is definitely unique. And in that uniqueness comes the ability to make stars. Or in some cases, guys that, for whatever reason, just never made it to the top. And that's actually what I'm going to talk about for a minute today. With the, at least in my opinion, 5 guys who could have and maybe even should have been higher than where they were. And we're starting right off solid number 5, MVP. So, anybody who remembers MVP from his original run, not his most recent, which his most recent has been pretty good. His run with the Hurt Business, his managing of Omos, for however that is good or bad. A lot of us really remember MVP from that time on SmackDown. And I'll be honest, MVP comes from a time in WWE that I kind of refer to as the log jam era. In that there were a lot of guys who, and girls, not just guys, I say guys, but a lot of people who really they were being primed to be at the top of the card, and then they just never got there. And somebody else on this list will fall into that category as well. But MVP really seemed to suffer from that. I know there, some personal issues and whatnot, but from a fan perspective, MVP was just constantly on the cusp. He got to feud with all the big names. Even when he was in the mid-card, that mid-card at the time was pretty stacked. But he got to feud with John Cena. He got to feud with, I don't know if it's necessarily feud, but I know he had some matches with Undertaker. MVP is just one of those guys that, despite the lineage of, being a multi-time United States champion, having probably one of the best heel to face turns of the time. The whole, he was doing the MVP lounge, and because he was just on this massive losing streak, which was originally a punishment. He kept losing, so they kept taking stuff from his MVP lounge, and it just became this kind of the genesis, if you will, of the sad Corbin. I've lost everything, and he gained a lot of sympathy, whereas unlike Corbin, who hit money and then became a complete loser again, MVP ended up winning the fans over and kind of ran with that for a while. So I want to give that shout that, at that time, he was flirting, and I think he probably could have won at least once the World Heavyweight title. Going right into number 4, the second from that log jam era, Mr. Kennedy. I was always a big fan of Kennedy. Man, there was just something about the presentation was unique. I had said for a long time that I would have loved to see Kennedy and Rock have some kind of promo battle. Now, that being said, I think Rock probably would have beat him, just in that Rock generally has more freedom. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. Kennedy, another guy that feuded a lot with the top guys, but again had backstage issues that really, really ruined his spot at the top. And thankfully, he's owned it. He's at a point now where he's like, yeah, I rubbed people the wrong way. I did the bad things, but from a fan perspective, man, it's shocking to imagine that, Kennedy never really did win the big one. His run was kind of filled with all kinds of what ifs and could have beens. He started with a Kenton bomb, even let me back that up, even from as far back as his beginnings before like the rise to the top. He's got the Kenton bomb, but Jeff Hardy used the Swanton, so he's got to come up with something else. Adversity was just kind of his best friend in WWE. But again, a guy who was primed to have it all, and he had kind of the makings to win it all and be it all. I don't think he would have been, a John Cena level guy by any means, but, I really think Ken Kennedy would have been a much, much bigger deal in professional wrestling had things worked out a little differently. I know he had a great run in Impact. That probably wouldn't have even happened. But that's a kind of a thought process for a different day. The next guy I'm going to spend a little time on is Miro, number 3. Starting as far back as Rusev, that guy, man, he's a beast. Love watching him work, and he makes anything work on top of that. From Rusev Day to that ridiculous best man thing that he did when he debuted in AEW, and then he finally got to do this Redeemer character, and all was right in the world. And then for whatever reason, they just dropped the ball with him. Professional wrestling is so weird because you always have guys who feel like they should win the big one but never do. I don't know if that's what Miro's lot in life is to just be a guy that, man, he should have won that. But, Kenny Omega or John Cena or whatever, I don't know if that's really what Miro amounts to, because he's just so goddamn talented. But for whatever reason, he gets out the starting block and he does really good. And then no matter where he's at, he just kind of, I don't want to say falls flat, just kind of disappears, falls flat in a way. WWE definitely dropped the ball with him. I hope that his career continues to go in an upward trajectory and he ends up winning a world title. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the AEW, doesn't have to be the WWE. Go to Impact or TNA now. Get your hands on that. Go to New Japan, win the big over there. But I feel like it's crazy that how talented this man is, and he has never, ever held a world title. Number 2, though, rapid fire, if you will, Christian Cage. There's a guy now, it's interesting to say at this because so far everyone on this list is somebody who's never held a world title. Christian Cage has held a world title multiple times. Multiple time TNA world champion, WWE world champion, world heavyweight, and ECW. Matter of fact, Christian dethroned Kenny Omega when Omega was in the belt collector gimmick. So how do you say Christian Cage never really, he's never hit his potential? Well, because he's just now finally at the best version of himself. Imagine this Christian winning a world title, and this Christian at the top of a company. That's what I'm talking about. Christian has always been kind of seen as the second fiddle to Edge or Adam Copeland. And it's debatable, maybe that's a topic for another day, between the two, who's the actual quote unquote better guy. But it's maddening to think that Christian Cage has held world titles and been less a draw than he is right now holding the TNT championship. And I think it's a shame that this version of Christian Cage will not see a world title. And finally, the number one pick I have on this list, the limitless Keith Lee. Now, I don't think it's any secret that I don't follow AEW as closely as Ricky, or as probably some of you who watch the channel. But I think it is absolutely asinine, and I understand, health issues have come up over the past for him, but good God, this man is legitimately one of the most talented people to ever lace up a pair of boots. And, WWE absolutely dropped the ball with him. There was no reason, the whole Bearcat League garbage. But that was Vince McMahon being Vince McMahon. Triple H did decent with him in NXT, minus the whole, he unified the NXT and North American championships, and then instead of defending them, just kind of dropped them. But that is what it is. But then he went to AEW and everyone was like, yes, here we go, Keith Lee. And he's still done relatively nothing in terms of getting close to a world title, getting close to the level of main eventer that I think a lot of people feel that he should be. And kind of just like everybody else on this list, you're like, what does it take to get him there? Obviously good creative. That's, good creative and being on the shows. That's, part 1 and 2. But man, the dude is just so talented. It blows my mind that you can't come up with something good for this guy. That you can't just be like, hey, well, we don't have anything creatively for him, but let's just have him go out there and beat people up in that really cool way he does. Maybe, give him something to do. Give him Christian. Have him feud with the boys, but I don't know. I would hope, kind of like Miro, and, I doubt much will happen for Christian at this point, but I hope that something turns and Keith Lee ends up being that main event caliber guy and not a, forever mid-carder where people look back and go, man, he should have been more. Kind of like a Ricky Steamboat, if you will, somebody who danced around the main event every now and then, but never really truly main evented. I want better for these guys. So, yeah, it's sorry for kind of a weird video. I'm just coming off of being sick, but you guys wanted to, not necessarily wanted, but needed a good video to come up. And I wanted to do a list video for a while. I have another one planned that I'm hoping to have a little bit more, pizzazz to it. But, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!